MM, and I ask a lot of questions.
I'm Pia, and I don't have a filter.
We'll be asking questions you dare not ask.
And giving answers that might be a little too honest.
So listen up, come and eavesdrop.
This is The Chismis Table.
Hi guys! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whatever part of the world you are watching. Welcome to another Cheese Miss Table episode. I know you missed us for 1 week, but we are now back with another very exciting and controversial topic for you because we know na, alam niyo naman, ginawa namin itong Cheese Miss Table because we want to talk about topics that are taboo or things that people don't really want to talk about in the open. And, you know, Pia, di ba, during the quarantine, wala tayong choice, especially last 2020, wala tayong choice but to stay at home and to entertain ourselves. Shucks,
Kasi sabi mo na tabu eh. Ibang context tuloy.
to pleasure
Yun nga
ourselves.
eh. Shucks, baka ano tuloy sila. Anyway, so one of the things na talagang nag-pick up in 2020 is what they call BL or boys love. Tama ba yan? Ayan. So, wala akong alam about boys love. I don't really have any idea about it. It was really just through my friend who was really into it na nalaman ko about this type of genre. And thanks to the internet, thanks na walang MTRCB rating, mas na-reach out ang maraming Filipino with this BL. And we are very fortunate dahil we have our good friend here, Miah, who will really tell us more about BL and what it really is. Dahil talagang sa totoo lang, medyo confused. Naalala ko tuloy yung episode with Migo a few weeks ago. It was already very confusing na he gave us a lot of insight, a lot of light about gender and sexual orientation. Now, there's this new genre naman of boys love na parang I feel medyo mas complex in a way. Pero I'm sure Maya will be able to give us more light about this. Hi, Maya!
Hi, Maya!
Hi! Hi, Pia and MM. Hello, nice to, share that chismis table with you.
Yeah.
Yay!
And first off, the weather's really hot, but your flowers look really watered. It looks like a rainy season because you're so blooming and fresh.
Oh. Okay.
Alam ko anong flower eh.
I mean, you guys.
Maghanap ako dapat ng flowers dito.
flowers. Hi.
Yeah, because our flowers are well watered.
That's why you guys are both blue.
Anyway, so bakit ka nga ba gines namin of all people about BL? Because Maya has his own show wherein Maya and his friends talk about BL. They do reaction videos. They do it.
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us more about that first, Maya.
Okay, so first of all, I will not claim that I'm a BL expert. I just want to say or put it out there that there are more people who are like more passionate or more enthusiastic about BL than I am. But regardless, so I'm part of BBS, so it's called BBS can stand for so many things, but it really started as Bruja Becky Squad. So BBS. I'm sure you're familiar with the term BBS. So we termed ourselves BBS.
Okay.
So it became Bruja BL Squad, and then because there was so much also sensitivity about the word boys love or maybe like boxing characters under the term or gender boys, whether they're part of the spectrum, diba?
So what is it? Is it gender? Is it a form of a genre of entertainment? Is it what is
so
it?
It is basically a genre of entertainment. It's any content, but the feature is really just. I mean, if you were to be basic about it, if you were to like remove the orientation, they don't want to be classified as male. Diba? It's basically romance between two male characters, biological male characters. That's basically it. But of course, I mean, the characters are becoming more and more complex. You have trans women or like trans men playing different roles in the BL show. So but if I were to be like super duper simple about it. It's
Mm.
basically just any show about love of two male characters. But siguro if I were to also claim some exclusions,
Mm-hmm.
what it is not, siguro parang the BL shows is focused more on the emotions and the relationships. So what it is not are really, it's not homoerotic. It
Okay.
excludes basically same-sex pornography or shows that
Hmm.
focus on just the sex. If you get what I
Okay.
mean.
Yeah, yeah.
So kumbaga
So it's
parang the net
more on the
effect would,
ano, yeah, it's more on the narrative. It's more on their story. Parang ganun ba?
yes, the
Okay,
story
okay.
revolving on the relationship, the feelings, and the net effect for the viewers or the readers. And
Mm.
of course, it can be a book, it can
Mm,
be a movie, it
mm-mm.
can be a series. The net effect is really
Mm-mm.
killing more than
Okay.
lust
Mm,
and and eroticism. And also, if we are to exclude a lot of BL fans are also super duper um, worked up with queer baiting content. I'm not sure if you've heard about
No, I don't know what
queer
that is.
baiting. So yun, basically, it's also the first time I've heard of it, and it's also the first time I found out about the concept when I got into like BL groups and BL reaction shows. So queer baiting, as the name suggests, is basically any show that baits queer target audience through insinuation of parang queer orientation or queer relationships in the
Okay.
show. But it's never like really put out there. It was never really like made official. Parang it's like
Mm.
tiptoeing on the edge
Yeah.
just to insinuate like sexual tension to
mm.
catch to the attention of like the LGBTQI community. Yeah.
So
Diba? It's
May ganun
it's
pa pala.
really
wait.
complex. It's really complex.
Okay,
Yeah.
Wait.
okay.
So
Sige.
BL is should not have queer baiting. Tama. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you
Tama.
toe the line between queer baiting and not queer baiting? How do you?
It's to be honest, for me, it's also really difficult. But for me, what draws the line is the actual admittance. Like for
Mm,
example, of the relationship, of feelings,
okay.
of them being in a relationship. Siguro some examples of queer baiting content. Uh, for example, Sherlock. Sherlock has been accused of queer baiting because these are two men who are living in a flat together. They are living partners. Diba? May ganon. May ganon, of
Okay.
course. And then another example would be Sigli. Of course, there are
Uh-huh.
out characters there,
Yeah.
but there are also two characters, si Rachel and si... What's the name of that girl? So there are two female characters who were once
Mm.
rivals. And then they became
Mm-hmm.
super...
Santana? Santana ba yun?
Rachel and I forgot the
Ah,
name of the
yeah, yeah.
other girl. Yeah, it was, and who they were fighting about Finn and
Yes.
at the
Okay.
start,
Okay. Si
and
ano,
then
si
parang
Quinn, yung blonde.
Quinn. That's correct.
Ah,
Yes,
okay, okay.
Quinn. That was
That's
parang they
queer
became super.
baiting?
Apparently, as the internet suggests, kasi parang at the end, parang they became super close. They declared themselves as parang soulmates. Parang they were in really sweet scenes, but they
Mm-hmm.
never really professed a relationship between the two of them. So yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
difficult, but I guess
Yeah.
to be safe, it's really just the LGBTQI community needing like an actual portrayal, not really like just an
Mm.
insinuation to make
Mm-hmm.
themselves feel that okay, it's really a pro gay show
Ooh,
or
that's so
pro LGBT.
difficult. I
It
Okay.
is,
mean,
it
I
is,
know.
but it is really becoming more and more complex. But in reality, I mean, siguro if we are to like trace back in history, we really have a lot of LGBTQI content, diba? Or movies
mhm.
or shows. I'm sure you can name a few, especially in Filipino history. Diba? Even
Yes.
in
Mm,
time
mm-mm,
immemorial, diba? There are a lot.
mm.
So BL in the strictest sense, it's really difficult to pinpoint when it
Mm-hmm.
officially like started or like
Mm-hmm.
when it like really came to birth. But of course, we know that
Mm-mm.
queer content or like LGBTQI content or like relationships portrayed between same sex really started in time immemorial. But
So,
siguro the hype, go.
no, go ahead. The hype one.
the hype siguro started, of course, in Japan when there were like manga.
Everything
Yung mga
weird
manga,
happens
yeah.
in Japan.
Diba? And they call it yaoi, which actually stands for BL. Pero parang another wave really came because of Thailand. They produce a lot of internet shows portraying two male characters. And these male characters actually may not even classify themselves as queer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they classify themselves as really straight, except that they fell in love with a guy, with another person of the same sex. Diba? Medyo
Okay.
complex siya
Yun
talaga.
nga eh.
Wait, so kunwari, Brokeback Mountain, is that BL?
Yeah.
Ang difficulty kasi with Brokeback, it became highly homoerotic at the end already. Siguro, if we are to like be strict on the emotions in the relationship, maybe good examples in the Western culture would be Love Simon, siguro.
Okay.
Are you
Ayan,
guys
yan.
familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Love Simon.
So
but
it's,
the
it's really
BL dapat walang any erotic
sex.
whatever sex in the movie. Parang, sex. Walang sex na ano.
Filter ka pa
Content.
naman.
Oo nga yun. Wala nga pala MTRCB. Okay, so so wala siyang any sex or whatever, touching, kissing, physical, whatever.
Actually, in reality, meron ding mga BL shows na it shows sexual tension or syempre meron strong kissing scene. But, it really never just focuses on that. Hindi lang ganun ka-strong or apparent yung sexual scenes within the show.
Interesting. The first time I ever heard of BL, there's a documentary on Netflix about different forms of love. And andun yung sa Japan. And the context in the Japan episode is they're very, very shy to express love, emotions, or whatever. So meron pa silang para siyang escort service, but it's really for women to be hugged by men. Hug, touch, no sex. As in, kasi kahit with their husbands, they're very shy about physical touch. So the context around BL in that episode is saying most of the readers, sa kanila kasi parang stories or books, most of the readers are women who prefer to be alone, but parang crave for that. So yun na nga siguro, the kilig feeling and the ideal romanticized version of what relationships could be. So yun yung context. Ang hindi ko lang gets is, I guess diverse din yung audience ng BL. But why would someone, straight, queer, or whatever, prefer the BL genre over Brokeback Mountain?
Yeah.
Correct. Actually, that's also true. You're also actually surprised because in Japan, BL actually started as a set of entertainment by women for women. So it's
Oh.
yes. I mean, some literature would say that BL really started as a by women for women type of work. But now I think because we're becoming more open, we're also becoming more flexible. It's just really driving out to a wider set of audience. And I even have straight male friends who watch BL shows. I mean, if you
Why do they watch it? Do they say why they watch it?
to be honest, they love the characters, they love the story. I'm not sure if they have tendencies. I mean, some of them have girlfriends. Yeah, I mean, in our group in BBS, so there's 7 of us. One of them is a female. One of them is female. As in, her boyfriend also watches it with her and feels kilig with her. So you're actually just more surprised, and I guess we're just really becoming more open and flexible, and also becoming more accepting of the different types of love.
I kind of get it. Kasi, like ako, I'm very straight. So, parang, kunwari stories with female to female or male to male interaction, I'm comfortable with up until they have any kind of sexual interaction. That kind of makes me uncomfortable. Sorry guys, but whatever.
But what is your threshold? Until which point makes you kilig?
The
The
sex.
kissing?
Yeah, the kissing I can
Okay,
I
fair
can
enough.
take it. Yeah, but when actual sex happens, that's when I
Mm.
kind of don't want to see or look anymore, whether it's male or female. So I kind of get it. I mean, I guess kasi nga, if BL stories don't dwell on the eroticism of the
Yeah.
relationship, then it's easier for I guess straight people to
Appreciate it
To
more.
appreciate the
appreciate.
story and the relationship happening.
Correct,
Because
correct.
relationship is relationship, diba? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Correct, correct. There are just some shows, of course, that are, BL shows that are a little bit more risky. Yung
Mm.
medyo, may passionate kissing, tatapon sa bed,
Mm.
ganyan.
May
Um,
walling, may ganon.
may walling. Diba? Or even, there are even some BLs na may lack of consent, diba? I mean,
Oh.
straight men being taken advantage of. May mga ganun pa rin, of course. You can't
Mm.
take it out, and I guess it's it, the I, maybe the message is that the genre is also evolving, diba?
Mm-hmm.
And who
Mm.
knows, it will
Mm.
be more encompassing in the future.
Yeah.
But
Ako, what,
have
ano?
you go?
Ha? Ano what is that, Maya?
Have you like heard of or parang seen any shows as
No.
well?
Or maybe we
Ako,
didn't know it's
no.
BL. Kasi
Ako rin,
that's what's confusing me because the way you describe the genre, it seems to me like it can be a lot of the shows that we've already watched. Diba? If
Correct.
it's relationship
Exactly.
between two males, then that's a lot of movies and shows already. So I don't know if
Exactly.
I've watched one or not. Probably we didn't know.
Diba? Especially in the Philippines, diba? We have a
Mm.
lot of shows with out and proud LGBTQI characters. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if you remember before si Eric Kizon showed in,
mm.
parang starred in Pusong Mamon,
Yeah, yung mga dating movies.
diba? And it focuses on
Hindi
love
alam,
as
hindi alam ni
well.
Pia yan. She doesn't watch local movies.
or even
Siya, hindi siya ganun ka-judge.
Grabe ka. Are you saying judge si Maya?
No, ako, judge.
We really just appreciate art and content.
Yeah, that's
And
and we,
it's really just a matter of different
yes, and we support local.
execution.
And then,
But you'll be surprised.
what?
You'll be surprised because each country would have like, if I were to say it, pangbato in terms
Ayan
of
na nga yung question ko, Maya. Kasi what's weird for me is for a very conservative region like Asia, bakit nagtathrive yung BL? Especially sa Philippines pa, di ba?
Kasi nasa loob ang kulo.
Deprived kasi masyado kasi
Diba?
kasi nga may MTRCB ratings.
correct. And maybe it also just goes to show that, these relationships really exist, and these writers or content creators are really just finding avenues to portray these stories. And you'll be surprised. For example, in China, one of the BL shows that I've seen, of course, there are shows na from Japan. Ang malakas din is basically Thailand. You have a lot from Thailand. And then you also have a lot from the Philippines. But what's surprising is that there are also some from China, which we know is a very conservative country as well, if you're to put it
Yeah.
out there. And as a matter of fact, there was one of the first BL shows. I said it was really like a declared BL show. It's called Addicted Heroin, wherein the story was about two best friends in high school, and then one of them fell in love with the other guy and became addicted, like really stalked and cornered and like almost raped the other guy, and it got banned as in China.
Siyempre.
Like it started airing for like one season, and then in the second season just got so yun. But you'll be surprised. Meron pa rin mga bago. There's still new content coming out there, particularly in that.
Where do you find the content? Is it YouTube or are they actual TV episodes?
Most of them are on YouTube. But of course, again, BL is not just, something that's watched or seen.
Oh,
Of
yeah,
course,
that's right. Yeah.
we also have books, we also have comics that are BL, diba? So of course, for those, they can be like the actual books. But when you want to like watch a movie or an actual series, YouTube is of course one of the good channels to watch in. So
Mhm.
some of the channels are maybe um, production houses that have good BL shows. In Thailand, you can check out GMM TV. So GMM TV, Nadao and Line TV. And then for the Philippines, you have Idea First. You also have Globe Studios. I mean, Globe Studios is a pretty
Really
mainstream, yes, brand
interesting.
who
Okay.
produces BL. Yeah. So yun, iba-ibang flavor din actually per country. So it's
Mm.
actually
Ano yung
like
flavor ng Philippines?
Oo nga.
yung
Halo-halo.
pansit daw, pansit.
Mm-mm-mm.
Okay. So what kind of stories usually come out of Philippine BL stories?
Okay, so for Philippines, what's good about BL content is that it doesn't, unlike for example Thai BL, it doesn't really fall like into a pattern, because for Thai BL the pattern is very apparent. Like one character would usually start off as straight, or both would start off as straight, and then there would be sexual tension, and then there will be an internal conflict, and then there will be a reflection, and then a realization, and then they end up happily ever after. That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yun yung usual formula naman sa Thai, which works for some actually, and for
Yeah,
me
yeah.
especially, if I want like just the usual kilig or conflict na good na, oy, parang finding, delight in someone coming out of the closet, then yeah. But for the Philippines, actually, I would say that it's breaking out of that mold. I'm actually really proud of Philippine BL content, because number one, in terms of the characters, they're casting different types, or different genders in the spectrum. Diba? You have, yun nga, as I mentioned, trans people who are playing trans roles, or even trans women as lead characters who, forms a relationship with a guy. Diba? Or for example, some characters would have
Ah,
openly gay characters already, not necessarily like coming out,
yeah. Wait,
and
sorry,
a
ano
lot
yung
of
storyline ng trans woman falling in love with a straight male? A straight male ba? Or it doesn't matter. Basta trans woman with a male
basta the
figure.
other one is
Ano
gay.
so parang magkaka-conflict siya na parang she transitioned to being female and then falls in love with a guy? Ganun ba yun?
No, ang maganda pa nga, parang it's not really like baiting na you would think na female and then comes out as trans woman. I haven't really seen the show. It's called My Troll Lover. So
Okay.
it's about a trans woman online seller.
Mhm.
And then
Pinoy na Pinoy online seller.
kasi it's shot during the onset of the pandemic. Diba,
Okay.
maraming online sellers. So this particular character was selling products online, and then one of the customers fell in love with her online, and their love story was just foretold through their phone screens, which is actually nice. Right?
Oh,
That's a
that's
creative
interesting.
way to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and for example, in Filipino shows as well, you have a lot of characters who really start out as gay, or as out and proud gay characters, or not necessarily like straight. Tapos, we're just really pulled out of the closet.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's good
Mm.
because
Mm-mm.
it's more real that way.
Yeah.
And we've also had interviews with some producers, and they really claim that, for example, their shows would also like shed light on other issues like the cancel culture on the
Mhm.
internet. And it just so
Mm.
happened that there are two male lovers in the show. Well, ganon. I mean, I would say that the Filipino flavor of BLs is, I think, more intellectually
Diverse.
processed.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm-mm.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Tsaka
Correct. Yes.
mas relevant to to current events.
And kumbaga is deeper when it comes to issues that it's tackling. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe kasi democratic country naman yung Philippines, di ba? So, mas may say rin naman talaga tayo in terms of different types of content, especially sa media. Especially
Yeah,
now with
that's
what's
true.
happening.
Yeah, it's true. And especially for us Filipinos, we're not really sophisticated when it comes to technologies, unlike Hollywood or Korea, diba? Or even Thailand, whose like entertainment industry is booming. We don't have access to the technological practices in producing these shows. So what do we have? It's really the story.
Storytelling.
It's really the you know the message more than the execution, which for me is a
Yeah.
good thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Who
true.
are casted in BL shows? Are there ang tawag doon, mainstream actors, or are they more indie? What kind of who participates in BL productions or stories?
In the Philippines, of course, it's BL is a new industry. They start to cast more in the actors or more or startup actors and actresses. But there are some who even cast known um, actors and actresses
Yeah.
already. For example, EJ Hallerina, I'm sure you're familiar with him in Going Bulilit, or her with her
Okay.
in Going Bulilit. Have you seen Going Bulilit?
Oo naman.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So one of the characters there, EJ, she's now an out trans woman who's very gorgeous. We've also met her online. We've also talked and guest here in one of our shows. She's really like smart. She's really talented and good at acting, and yeah, and these production houses really start to recruit more and more prominent actors and actresses. And in Thailand, for example, it reached the point where in BL became like a mainstream thing, as in, their BL actors and actresses there are, as in talagang the stars in Thailand. They have like conventions, they have meet and
Wow.
greets, they have events, they have concerts. Na kumbaga, if we were to compare in the Philippines, they're like the Nadine Lustre and the James Reid in the Philippines. Whereas in Thailand, they're BL characters.
Why do you think
Wow.
was there a need to identify this genre as BL? I mean, to me, I mean, I guess I'm very ignorant about these things, but to me, it can be classified as romance or I don't know, something more generic.
Mm.
Why did the need to term BL, to term these stories as BL?
Correct, correct. That's a valid question, and that's actually a good question because I think the term BL really started when we are still less conscious about SOGI, about sex or gender orientation, or
Okay,
about the
what's
different
Suji?
classifications of SOGI is SOGI, right?
Ah,
Sorry, sexual orientation, gender identity.
okay. Mhm,
Diba? I mean, Soji really just started gaining attention
mhm,
now.
Yeah.
But, BL as a term, if it started in Japan, for example, the term yaoi really started like in the 1970s, 1980s,
huh?
when Soji
Okay.
was
Tagal
really
na.
not yet a thing. Yeah, matagal
Okay.
na. Matagal na talaga. So that's why it really just started out as boys love, because at that time, hindi pa uso yung different terms, or hindi pa
Right.
even uso yung concept of like gender identity and gender
Yeah.
expression. That's why it's really was just simple for them. It's really just boys love.
Mm. All the while, akala ko talaga porn yung boys love. Akala ko
And
talaga. Yeah.
and in the Philippines, you know that there was a wave of parang indie shows with a lot of sexual content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, di ba that's where Coco Martin started?
Yeah.
So,
Yung
Yeah.
you're
ano ba
familiar
yan?
with
Yeah,
Coco
yeah, yeah.
Martin.
Oo naman.
yung generation na yan, or maybe like in the early 2000s, there were like a lot of same-sex
Mm-hmm.
but they are really more sexual, and I guess that's really how the connotation of BLs becoming more sexual came about in the Philippines, because
Yeah.
there was a wave of that in the shows. Diba? If I were to name a few, you have Service, Masahista,
Mm.
Lalaki sa Parola. I'm not sure if you remember those shows. There was like
Yeah.
in
Mga
our college.
10 years ago?
Yeah,
10 years
yeah.
ago? Oo.
Masahista. Yung mga ganun. I'm not sure if you're
Ayan,
still
yan ang queer baiting. Title pa lang eh.
Wala ba diyang wala bang tubero?
Correct, di ba? Meron pa lalaki sa parol. Lahat na. Maybe, iba-ibang na. Maybe we can term like different professions. BL stories.
Ano yung title ng mga BL shows dito?
So the more famous ones, the one that I really, really love in the Filipino BL scene is Gaya sa Pelikula.
Okay.
Gaya
It's
sa
by
pelikula.
Gaya sa Pelikula. I highly recommend it. It's free. You can access it online via YouTube.
What's the story?
It's about one out character and one character who knows he's gay deep inside but is not like ready to go out of the closet or come out of the closet or go out of the closet. And then they happen to be like neighbors in the dorm, and that's where the relationship started. And the story is really nice, and the message is really like falling in love with someone who's not ready to come out of the closet.
Ay,
Ganda.
maganda yan.
Yeah, and it also shows like the culture of the country for that matter.
Yeah, that's what I was
Diba?
thinking.
And the show actually showed some of the factors why the other character was not ready to come out of the closet or go out of the closet, because of family issues, the discrimination that other gay relatives experience, which really happens in the Philippines.
Parang feeling ko, I'm guessing all the BL stories have a happy ending. Hindi ba? Or may mga tragedy din ba?
Not really tragic kasi nga, the net effect is really light, kilig, romance, Hindi naman yung super tragic na, oh my gosh, na
namatay siya, wala nang choice.
scenario, correct. Or like the heavy topics na, or like, well, hindi masyadong heavy yung mga conflict, really more in the emotion. Some of them would have happy endings, some of them would have not so happy endings. But, even those that are without a happy ending, or those who
still
end up
feel
not
good
together still feel good, and sometimes will even make you think what really happened in the end, which just shows the intellectualization of BL shows now in the Philippines.
See, I feel like BL boys love stories express a lot of frustrations of the queer community, na these are things that they want to do, want to have, but couldn't. So they idealize it into this story where, the outcomes are what they want to happen in their own lives, which I think is why it's so relatable for a lot of people, even if they're not queer.
Exactly, that's totally it. Because it's the reality. These are, stories of real people. Sometimes are just written on, a script or a piece of paper, and they're produced online. These really happen. And I guess that's really the best thing about the BL revolution. It's really just all about representation.
Yeah.
Because we know that these types of loves exist, in real life. I'm sure you have friends who are in same-sex relationships, diba? And of course, some of us would even talk about our friends who are in same-sex relationships. And sometimes we even enjoy talking about these relationships because, these are great stories to begin with. And it's really just a matter of time wherein the spotlight is just shed on these types of characters.
And uhaw na kasi yung mga tao sa feel-good stories eh.
Oo naman.
So like, now that you're explaining it a lot more, I kind of understand why straight people would also subscribe to these stories. Because again, love is love. If you're really looking for that kind of I don't know, validation or relatable story, it wouldn't matter if you're or what gender you're watching, because you will at some level relate. And at the end, the stories always come out as feel good. So why would you not like it?
Yep.
Diba?
Correct,
Parang
correct.
like yung gaya sa pelikula, someone falling in love with someone else who's not ready, regardless of gender. That's a lot of people right now. and
Exactly.
then
And I'm sure you've encountered a friend or two who has the same conflict.
And
Yeah.
then if you're someone who's in that situation and you watch a show that relates to your story but then has a happy ending, of course you love it.
Exactly. Especially if you like become so invested in the characters and
Hmm.
uh, there's also another Filipino BL show, Game Boys. I highly, highly recommend it.
Game
Like
Boys.
I've heard
Okay.
of that. Game Boys. Oh nga.
Game Boys.
I
It's
didn't realize BL pala yun.
it is so it stars um Elijah
Wood? Just
Canlas and
kidding.
Tokoy De Santos. So they have a lot of acting experience in the indie scene. So
Mhm.
more sexual yung tension dun sa previous shows nila. So for example, for Elijah Canlas, one of his prior works include Kalel 15, which is someone who um, caught HIV for getting into same-sex relationship at the age of 15.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then Elijah Canlas naman portrayed the character wherein he's a male pageant character or like male pageant contestant who had like a gay benefactor. So, yun yung mga previous roles nila. But then they shifted to like a more wholesome content, which is Game Boys. And the good
Mm.
thing about Game Boys naman is that similar to My Troll Lover, it's actually a story during the pandemic. So one of the characters, so the one portrayed by Elijah Canlas, or Cairo in the show, is actually a gamer. That's why it's called Game Boys.
Mhm.
And then diba, you have live games that are
Yeah.
Yung
televised on
stream din.
YouTube.
Streamed, yeah.
Yeah. So si Kokoy De Santos actually was one of the viewers who fell in love with a gamer.
With the
And then they sort of got into like a cat and mouse, uh, trying to like woo each other type of relationship during the pandemic, which is mostly online. And then a lot of their conflicts also rose from them not seeing each other personally, diba? Kasi
Mm.
syempre when you're just connecting with each other virtually, um, it's more difficult to like explain your side or like
Mhm.
um, cuddle with each other or
I
resolve
know,
a
right?
conflict. So
LDR sucks.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure
Gets
you
everything
can
through the
attest to
phone. Gets.
mm, through the video, diba? And sometimes when there's a conflict, someone will just hang up, diba? It's more difficult for you to talk to them. So
Ay,
everything's
manonood na ako
there.
ng Game Boys.
And the message is that it's basically something that's experienced by a lot of us during the pandemic, diba? We don't have the luxury of like dating with each other, especially if we're not
Mhm.
married with our partners. We don't have the luxury of like spending time physically. We are distanced by lockdowns and like
Yeah.
and quarantine checkpoints.
Mhm.
And I think for me, Game Boys is truly, truly remarkable in a sense that it tells us our lives during the pandemic. It's just so happened that there are two boys
Yeah.
who fell in love in the show. So it's basically like
Mm.
a piece of history 2020 in its finest form, told through the lens of like two boys.
Mhm. Are
That's
there
nice.
mainstream titles, mga, I don't know, like Hollywood, whatever, that are tagged as boys love?
Actually, in the Western culture, boys love per se is not really like a term that's widely used.
So it's
But of course,
Asian talaga.
I
Mm-mm.
think yes.
Mm.
It's like I think stated explicitly for Thai shows, for Filipino Taiwanese, Chinese, some South Korean, but for Western, not really in the stricted sense. But I'm sure there are like a lot of
Yeah.
Hollywood shows or even like content that's like BL class that can be classified as BL, but it's just not like explicitly mentioned. So
Mm-hmm. Maya, I'm interested. How did you get into BL? Like what was the first BL that you've ever watched?
okay, the first BL that I've ever watched
meron,
was actually
meron siyang kilig face eh.
oh no, it just brings a lot of giddy
Okay.
feelings. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Love of Siam,
No.
but are you familiar with Mario Maurer? Mario
Mm.
Yes.
Maurer, I'm sure you're
Mm,
familiar with
mm,
him. The
mm.
Thai actor who flew here in
Yes.
the Philippines, had the love team with Erich
With Erich
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. Mm.
Yes. Mm. So there, one of his debut shows or one of his debut movies was Love of Siam, there, which was in 2007 actually. So come to think of it, there are BL shows as early as early 2000.
Mm.
Sorry.
Mhm.
But yung latest or most recent wave of BLs, I really like got into it again. I sort of like stopped for a while. Of course, I watched a few here and there, but I never like really got into a trance until during the pandemic.
Mm.
It started with Sotus, which is a show that's also available on Netflix. So going
So
back to
to
the
us?
question of Pia, yeah, Sotus, Sotus.
Okay.
There. So there. So as going back to the question of Pia, so some shows are even available on Netflix. So some of them you can
Mhm.
Google on Netflix. BL. Some will turn out to be suggested to you.
Tama.
So there, I
Sotus, an
started with
engineering
Sotus.
freshman, stands up against the hazing traditions of his school but finds love among the power struggle between the seniors and juniors.
Yes.
See, ito na naman yung mga ideal love stories. Yung mga gusto
Oo.
ng mga tao mangyari sa kanila. Gets! Nagigets ka na kung ano yung voice lang.
Diba? Diba?
Okay.
Yun yung flavor ng Thai, yung parang
Mm.
mas fairy tale ideal scenarios. Whereas in the Philippines, it's really more, real life, I think.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think if I were like to classify. So it's really whatever you want. And then in the Philippines, the craze really started when Together the series was televised here in the Philippines and I Want TV. It
Mm.
shows Brett Ritchie.
That's a Thai then? Thai.
It's Thai then. It's
Okay.
Thai. It's Thai. But it was televised on I Want TV. So that's why it started to appeal to like a wider set of audience and that's why it gained a lot more traction in the Philippines because of I Want TV. It was dubbed, of course. Some of the people would prefer dubbed. Of course, for me, I don't personally. I mean, it distracts me to be honest. I
Yeah,
just
oo nga.
watch with the subtitles and get the emotions and like
Mm.
the real meaning of words through actual
True.
terms used, diba? So yun, but because of the translations, the dubbing, um, it appealed to a wider audience among Filipinos, and that's where new content really started sprouting here in the Philippines.
When you first watched I Love Siam, did you already know it's a boys' love genre?
I think I did. I mean, I don't remember to be honest, and that was like 10, 20 years ago. Napaghahalataan yung age natin. We just look young and supple all we just look moist, but we have been through a lot.
Okay, I just like any concept relating to same-sex or queer community, I'm guessing there's a lot of criticism or bashing maybe that happens around the stories of boys love. Is there is there what kind of criticism happens around it towards the stories, and are there also anything directed towards those who watch or those who prefer the boys love genre?
If I maybe there are like top three issues for me. Number one would be there's a big fuss about straight male characters portraying
Oh,
these
okay.
queer characters. And a lot of fandoms really take that seriously. And especially sometimes these male actors in real life come out with their girlfriends, and sometimes their fans really become triggered. My gosh. I mean, of course, the ideal scenario is that, of course, eventually you would want to like cast actual queer actors to portray queer roles so that they'll, become more um, relate. I mean, they would
Like
relate more to the
diversity
character.
talaga. I mean, that
Yes.
issue happens in the entertainment industry in
Yeah.
general, diba? Parang casting someone who's not really the same race or the same nationality. So I kind of
Yeah,
get
yeah, that's
why, but I
yeah.
like now it's a little bit more pronounced kasi nga there is a really strong clamor for diversity and inclusion. So,
Correct,
pero
correct.
bakit nga? Why would they cast a straight actor
Yeah.
playing a queer character?
Maybe I would assume this is just me thinking. They want the effect of, these straight acting characters really being pulled out of the closet. Diba?
Oh,
Kasi,
okay.
diba, when you cast like a queer character, sometimes it gets obvious.
Yeah.
Nawawala yung thrill of like coming out of the closet or like
Yeah.
them having like a self-realization. Whereas if you see someone who is like acting straight at the start or like is really pronounced as straight at the start and goes through that journey,
Yeah.
some people would find that really enjoying and appealing.
Yeah.
So
And like
that's
in sa Philippines, diba, meron si Tony Labrusca. I remember parang I saw a trailer of a movie na BL with Tony Labrusca. Parang you wouldn't really look into, like, hindi mo siya papansinin if it weren't Tony Labrusca. Diba? Parang medyo clickbait, diba? Queer bait din siya in, ano, yung term, whatever.
Kasi si Tony
So,
Labrusca siya.
kasi si Tony Labrusca siya. So,
Yeah, good.
yeah,
subukan din,
yeah.
diba?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so there are some shows with prominent actors like Tony Labrusca being cast already. Like Hello Stranger, I think. Yeah, and some of them would also say that if um sometimes if they the problem with out and proud gay characters is that if they start to be cast in BL shows, sometimes they get typecast in just these gay characters, whereas they don't have the chance to portray non-BL shows already. And I
True.
guess that's where also the difficulty comes in naman. Siguro another issue, second one would be um, the the portrayal of female characters in BL shows. In Filipino BL shows, the female characters would end up to be like the strong, independent best friend who gives advice to the gay best friend. Mga ganyan. Medyo mas secure, strong, independent. Or like the ex-girlfriend who end up supported the the ex-boyfriend who turned out to be in a relationship with another guy. Ganun yung portrayal of female characters in
Okay.
Filipino BL. Whereas in Thailand, the portrayal of female characters are more the kontrabida or more the villain. So they are like angry ex-girlfriends or like the meron ding mga supportive best friends or like the strong independent women who like fights for these gay or like strong allies if you were to call it diba? Straight allies. Meron ding mga ganon. Pero meron ding issue on females being portrayed as like
Yeah.
anti-gay or like is the one that's deterring the relationship.
That might be a
That's
culture thing. Kasi sa Philippines, yun talaga yung role ng babae. And, di ba? Like, I have a gay best friend. I have several gay friends. And ako talaga yung supportive friend. Never naman
yeah, diba?
ex-girlfriend
The
ng ano.
cheerleaders, diba?
Yeah.
the, the emotional support, the shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
So mas ganun yung portrayal of and that's also true. Maybe it's also in the culture as well. We don't know. I mean, I haven't like delved into that culture of Thailand. Yeah.
Okay.
And another would also siguro be yun, yeah, the issue on consent. Because especially with queer shows, syempre, some stories would start with one character falling in love with another character, di ba? So syempre, there are usual scenes wherein, one character takes advantage of the other when he's drunk or like while he's asleep.
Mm.
And these are shows that are portrayed, to mass media, and you see that, there are some characters who don't follow consent, and some people
Mm.
really take it seriously, and some people bash them for it. Yeah. And siguro another fourth issue din pala, sorry, would be casting or like typecasting the BL characters into what they say as heteronormative roles.
Mm. Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
What
What
they
does that mean?
Heteronormative roles in relationships is actually being portrayed as like someone with a naturally female character with one naturally male character, and then the other one is parang depicted as sort of bluer character, and then the other one is more
Mhm.
pinkish character, and then
Yeah.
sometimes in the shows they call each other husband and wife, or
Okay,
parang, for
okay.
example, there are two boys and then they call each other husband and wife, ganun.
Mm.
Some some fans do not like that, or parang bash the shows for that, parang using heteronormative terms
Yes,
or
yeah.
like terms of endearment in the shows, because of course that assumes that there is a naturally more female wifey role, and there's a
Mhm.
natural more masculine stronger
Yeah.
husband role. And sometimes in these BL characters, yung mas masculine yung tinatawag na husband, yung medyo mas out and flamboyant yung tinatawag
Okay,
na
okay.
wifey. And parang
Mm.
why would you assume that, diba? Why would you assume that it's the husband who's the stronger, more masculine one, and the
Mm.
wifey
Mhm.
who's like the more feminine one? Why
Flamboyant
will you
one.
box them into characters? Diba? Why not just, you know, just lovers? You know?
Mm. Mhm.
Diba ang
Well,
complex?
oo,
Sorry.
Yes,
ito na.
I
Ito na naman tayo sa mga complex and you have to be
But
politically correct
na-gets
and
ko
everything.
yan. Kasi, ano to? That became a big issue then. Not with boys love, but with entertainment in general. Kasi nga, with the stronger clamor for diversity, inclusivity, a lot of I read something about Modern Family, for example, with um sino nga ba yun? The gay couple
Yes,
in Modern
yes, yes.
Family, and they were being criticized as falling into that heteronormative stereotype, because why does someone have to be the female in the relationship and the other one would be the male in the relationship when both of them are supposed to be male?
Correct.
So that also speaks to how society looks at the female role, the traditional female role. Kasi
Correct.
yung mga
Correct.
female in the relationship between two male partners, siya yung nagluluto, sila yung nasa bahay,
Mm.
nag-aalaga nung ampon nilang anak. Kaya nagagalit yung mga tao.
Yeah. Diba? In Modern Family, one of them is like a house husband, and then the other
Mhm.
one is like the
Yung isa
provider.
lawyer na
Ah,
na breadwinner, and then the other one parang hobby-hobby siya, tapos siya yung funny, siya yung makulit. So nagalit yung mga tao sa Modern Family.
Correct, correct. So
mm.
I guess well, who knows, maybe they just want a creative license, or
Mhm.
maybe these relationships really do exist, or maybe who knows, maybe some same-sex couples really do want to call each other
Yeah.
husband and
Yeah.
wifey,
Yeah.
diba? But I guess siguro we're also in a time now wherein our generation is more woke, if I may say, or is like more sensitive with these issues. So I guess the challenge now for the media is to really be more sensitive, or like to do more research when putting content out there, because at the end of the day, with any content comes influence, diba? And you have huge reach, and with any huge reach you can define what's being talked about in out there. So better be responsible for it, for that
Yeah.
matter. That's really something good about BL. It makes us talk about these relationships. It makes us recognize that these relationships exist, and the fact that this makes us feel good during the pandemic. It's actually something that's like a proud moment for the LGBTQI community, because we're being shed light on, and at the same time we're being joy and happiness, and even way of thinking, or even just thinking of the minds for the viewers out there. If we encourage conversation, if we encourage thinking, then we've pretty much done our jobs.
The Chismis Table.